Well, hello. We are going to work exercise 2-21 from the book on page 65. So I'm going to recommend that if you don't already have your book open or your e-version of the book open to page 65, you do that, pause, get your book open, because I'm not really going to look at this again. I'm just going to work the problem. So you may want to stop and go open to that page either on your computer, your e-reader, your book, whatever. So exercise 221 is a general overall problem. Your homeworks will probably be just one little part of this, and your quiz definitely will be one little part of these. But this sort of is an overall problem to help you understand the idea about these costs and the cost of goods sold. So we're going to work this one, and it's got some information. It gives us beginning inventories for direct material, work in process, and finished goods, ending inventories. It tells us how much we used during the year. And the problem wants us to calculate total cost of direct materials used in production, calculate the cost of goods sold and the manufacturing cost, do the unit manufacturing costs. All right, what's the prime? What's the conversion? So we got a couple things going on here. Any one question on your exam would probably just have one of these. It would be something like, what is the conversion cost? Or what is the total production cost? Something like that. You might have this information, but you would just probably pick out one thing. But we'll do all of it. So let's get started. There are a few things I want to remind us of. First of all, a lot of the logic for this, what we're talking about, comes from pages 42 to 45 in your book. So if you're wanting to go back and review and think about, what is the real source of this, it's pages 42 to 45. Couple of formulas that may not be super obvious from reading 42 through 45, but they should sort of make sense. You probably recall from financial accounting, from management accounting, 2301 and 2302, beginning inventory plus purchases equals ending inventory. Same idea here. For part one of this problem, we're going to have to start with our direct materials beginning inventory, add the direct materials purchased, and subtract out the direct materials ending inventory to figure out how much direct materials we use. So you've got your beginning inventory plus purchases minus ending inventory. Direct materials is just an inventory like anything else, so it works the same as any inventory. Beginning inventory plus purchases minus ending inventory equals the amount you used or the amount you sold or whatever. Next, for part two, which asks us to calculate the cost of goods manufactured, I think it's important to remind ourselves where that comes from. So we take direct materials plus direct labor plus overhead, and we add those all together in work in process. So it's easy to imagine in a factory we're making something. Let's say we're making our good old pencil. So we're going to have direct materials of wood and rubber and metal and lead, and some people will be working on that factory floor. That's the direct labor, the ones actually running the machines. And then there's some overhead, just some things like the electricity that runs the machines and things like that. And they all get combined as we do our transactions in our accounting system. The direct materials get moved to an account called work in process. Direct labor goes to work in process. Overhead goes to work in process. And once that's completed, it becomes our cost of good manufactured. Then what happens is, that's our inventory. We sell it, and it becomes cost of goods sold. So remember, there's our direct materials inventory, our work in process inventory, our cost of goods manufactured inventory. We sell it. Goods available for sale is what this is frequently called. And then that turns into the expense, cost of goods sold, which is what you see on the income statement, because COGS is an expense. These are all costs, which are not the same thing as expenses. They really become the asset inventory. All right, and for part three, where we're going to calculate some conversion costs and some prime costs, Remember, prime costs are direct material plus direct labor, and conversion costs are direct labor plus overhead. All right, so let's go ahead and work part one. Calculate the total cost of direct material used in production. All right, so for this one, we're going to need to figure out this beginning inventory plus purchases minus ending inventory. So it tells us our beginning direct materials inventory is 68,000 plus purchases. If you look down there below, they say during the year direct material purchases amounted to 278,000. Then, well, we're not adding, we're subtracting, right? Minus ending inventory. So the ending inventory for direct materials, right, which obviously didn't get into work in process, it's still in direct materials inventory, 70,400. So we take our beginning inventory plus our purchases minus our ending inventory, which this would be your direct materials that haven't been used yet, because that's why they're still in inventory, and that equals $275,600. And that's the answer. That is the direct materials, right, in production. Direct materials used, so $275,600 for the year in question. All right, so that's the answer to question one. Question two asks us, calculate the cost of good manufactured. Calculate the unit manufacturing cost. All right, well, let's do this first one, the total, right? So total versus units, all right? So cost of goods manufactured is simply direct material, right? Cost of goods manufactured, direct material plus direct labor plus overhead. We're not really worried about work in process right now. We're just going to add those all up and then we'll back out the work in process that's still around. All right, so direct materials used for the year we know was 275,600. So direct materials equals 275,600. Direct labor is, they just tell us that. Direct labor was 189, so 189,000. And overhead, they also tell us, is 523. Right? So we add all those up, and that's my total manufacturing cost. Right? All three of those. So that's 987.6. Right? Now, work in process is an inventory. So it works just the same as the direct materials inventory and our goods available for sale inventory. All inventories work the same. Beginning inventory plus purchases minus ending inventory equals goods sold or goods used or whatever kind of inventory you're doing. All right, so in this case, we want to know our total manufacturing cost. We know that during the year, this is what we spent. This was the cost, $987.6. But we did start with some work in process, and there is some work in process at the end, right? So we have to add in beginning work in process, which they told us was 29,400. Right? And we have to take out the ending work in process, subtract ending work in process, which they tell us is 40,000. Right? So this is what we had on the factory floor to begin with. This is what ran through the factory floor, and this is what was still on the factory floor at the end of the year in terms of inventories. So 987.6 plus 29.4 minus 40,000 is 977,000. Right, and that is the answer to the question, the cost of goods manufactured. All right, then the second part of part 2, I guess I'd call this part B, 2B, is, well, what's the unit cost? Well, divide that by the number of units. And they tell us during the year 100,000 units were completed. So you take that 977,000, divide it by 100,000. So that's pretty easy. That's $9.77 per unit. All right. So there is our unit cost of goods manufactured. All right. $9.77. Great. So we have one last problem to work, and it is asking us to do prime cost and cost per unit. So the problem tells us of the unit manufacturing cost that we calculated, so $9.77, $2.70 is direct materials, and $5.30 is overhead. Great. What is the prime cost per unit? What is the conversion cost per unit? So we know that prime is direct materials plus direct labor. Okay, well that's great. They've told us that 270 is direct material, but they don't tell me direct labor. They just tell me direct material and overhead. Well, I know that it takes all three of these, direct material, direct labor, direct overhead, to make my unit cost. So I have to, calculate that direct labor cost first before I can calculate the prime. So direct labor is, start with our 977, subtract out that 270, and subtract out that $5.30, right? And that tells me my direct labor is $1.77. All right, so 177 equals direct labor per unit. All right, so, and that was just a little step I had to do because they didn't tell me the direct labor per unit, but I used my logic. I said, well, if the total cost per unit is direct materials, direct labor, and overhead, and I have direct materials and I have overhead, the difference has to be direct labor. Now I can do my prime cost, right? Prime cost is direct material and direct labor, so there's my direct labor, 177, and they told me my direct materials are $2.70. And so that is, prime cost is $4.47. All right, so that's prime cost per unit. All right. Don't ever get confused. Always read questions carefully because sometimes they're going to ask for total and sometimes they'll ask for per unit. So don't let that confuse you. Just always look for the word total or unit and you'll be fine. The last part of this problem is, what is the conversion cost per unit? Okay, conversion cost is direct labor plus overhead. So we know labor is 177. And we know the overhead is $5.30. So 177 plus 530 is $7.07. 707, right, equals conversion per unit. All right, so that does it. You might want to take a stab at the homework in the quiz. They probably won't be overall quite as much, and certainly the quiz is going to be just little short parts, but this should help you. We are going to go ahead and I'm going to do a separate video on exercise 2-22, so you might want to go ahead and look at that before you go ahead to the homework. Good luck.